What's going on, everybody? We got a great guest for you today. Gator Boy Chris Gillette. He's on the show today, and he's got some amazing stories about alligator training, sharks, alligator wrestling, crocodiles, cobras, working with David Blaine. It's a great conversation. Stand by. Here we go.
And the producer's like, no, that sounds better. We're using that. And I'm like, wasn't the show supposed to be like educational? He's like, the effing people will effing eat what I effing feed them. He can barely move. He's so limp. And then I help him onto the stage and hold the mic for him. And like, I'm holding him up, you know, and then look out and just see this huge crowd. I'm like, hey, there's Eminem. I'm Chris Gillette, and this is the Tom Rowland podcast.
Chris, what's going on?
Good. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really happy to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we were going to get started an hour ago, but you had the animals were going crazy. What kind of thing did you have going on this morning? I would imagine it's something all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty much nonstop. So like last night, it got down to about 37 out here. So I had to move a bunch of animals around and put them inside. And then this morning, I got to put them out.
So you have to move things. What's the temperature where you really start having some trouble?
So just kind of backtrack for a second. So I've lived in South Florida for like the last 20 years or something, you know. And so I just recently bought a 40-acre property up in North Florida. And so that was only about like 8 months ago or so. Okay. And so we just moved our entire rescue up here to North Florida. And obviously North and South Florida, well, maybe it's not obvious if you don't know, there's a huge difference. They might as well be different states, honestly. Mm-hmm. And then up here, it gets down like in the 30s. Down in South Florida, that almost never happens.
Right.
And so we're having to make a lot of adjustments for our animals.
Well, we've had, in South Florida, all kinds of fish kills and different things when it gets really cold. What's the temperature where it really could affect your animals?
Well, I got a lot of variety. I have all kinds of different animals. So some of them, they can't handle lower than 50.
Really?
You know, some of them are a lot more hardy. Depends on what we're talking about. But up here, it can get down into the teens. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And so is it true, like, you know so much about alligators and crocodiles and everything. I think I saw something where it was, how can an alligator, I guess what I'm getting at is, can an alligator survive very cold temperatures, like even being iced in? I think I saw something on Instagram, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it showed like just the nose up, ice all around an alligator. Tell me how that works with an alligator or a crocodile, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's only alligators. So alligators are the most cold-tolerant crocodilians. So they range all the way up to North Carolina naturally. And up that far north, the ponds they live in will freeze over, and they will have their nose sticking up out of the ice. And that way they can still breathe. But they are the most cold tolerant. And to give you a really crazy example, I know this old timer crazy guy, and he had a place up in Buffalo, New York, where he had alligators, and he would bring them in every winter because obviously it's Buffalo, New York. It's super cold. They're going to die, right? Well, he had one that he couldn't catch. It was in an outdoor pond, and he'd catch them all, bring them inside. He had one he couldn't catch, and it survived multiple winters outside in Buffalo, New York.
Wow. That's where they ice fish. That's like 3 feet of ice or 2 feet of ice in some of those ponds.
He doesn't know how it survived. He could never find it. It would just, everything would be covered in snow and everything's frozen. And the gator, he assumed, was dead. And then come the spring thaw, it's swimming around.
There he is.
So that's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Now, that's one that is, anecdotal. I know this guy's telling the truth. I've known him for many, many years. But that's one that, what do you want to say, modern science is not aware of, as far as I know. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So what was the decision like to move from South Florida to Northern Florida, especially with the temperatures and all the different animals that you have? Was that, what kind of factors did you play in that made it worth going up there?
About 90% financial.
Yeah.
That's, to be honest with you. Yeah. I got 40 acres up here for less than a single family home with a side lot would cost in South Florida.
Wow. And
it is insane, the price difference.
And so is this the area that you're putting out most of your social media content, with that super clear water and where you're swimming with Casper? Is that where you
down
are?
south still.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm doing, that's at the Everglades Outpost in Homestead. So what I do right now, until I get my gator ponds dug and I get my stuff completed up here, because that's a whole mission in itself. What I'm doing right now is I'm driving down 6 hours each way every weekend to go down there, hang out with Casper on the weekend. I run my tours with him, do some videos with him, and then I drive all the way back up. So it's a 12-hour commute for my work day.
Wow. And when do you think that you'll have this all complete?
I mean, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that next week we're supposed to concrete the ponds that I have dug already, and hopefully we get that done. And then we have to do the permitting process through FWC, which is can be difficult. So hopefully, maybe best case scenario within a month. Worst case, they're supposed to be able to process permits within 90 days, but I've heard that is not always the case. So.
So, what's your vision for this new place?
So it's a lot of stuff going on up here. So we do run a wildlife rescue, an exotic animal rescue. So we have a lot of things that like I never thought we would have as far as envisioning goes, right? So like right now I have 5 coatis, which
What's
is
a
like a South American raccoon that I never thought I would even have one of these things. So yeah, running a rescue means very weird, unexpected stuff comes up. My vision is having alligators and crocodiles and really focusing on that, but when you're doing rescue work, it's kind of wherever the call comes from.
So the rescue, like that particular animal, was someone trying to keep those? Do you have
So
collectors and people that just you end up with these crazy things that people are trying to keep as a pet, or how does it work?
right. So one of them we actually caught. We got a call early in the morning, like, oh, there's a coati in our garage. And they were like, what? And they sent us a picture, and sure enough, it was. It was in kind of Gainesville area. And we drove over, and yeah, somebody, I don't know if it's escaped or released pet, but yeah, it was in their garage, and it was not nice. And yeah, full feral wild animal. But it had one of its claws was actually all the way curled back into its own palm. So whoever had it was not taking good care of it
Mm,
originally. So that's how we got one of them, and then the other four are surrenders from people who did have them as pets.
wow. And then you could get a call for anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll. We're not permitted for everything, but I mean, I've talked to FWC. I'm like, dude, if you ever need a hand, let me know. I will help you catch literally anything.
That's wild. All right. Well, before we get too far into the podcast, I want to do the hot seat questions with you. It gives the viewers a way to get to know you a little bit better. Some of them are funny, but so either or questions, just as quickly as you can go. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone,
Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube?
Instagram.
Something that scares you?
Um, exams. That's
Exams. Okay.
Yeah, no, like that's the honest answer, man. I still have bad dreams about college exams.
Me too. Sharks or crocodiles?
That's so hard to pick. I guess crocodiles.
Okay.
That's really hard.
Mountains or beaches for vacation?
I'm always on beaches. I'm always diving. So if I was gonna go somewhere where I don't normally go, maybe mountains, I guess, because
Okay.
I never do that.
Okay. Alligators or crocodiles?
Oh, you're killing me with these.
I know. I sat up late at night thinking about how I was going to stump you.
Oh God, yeah. It's so hard. I guess I'd go with Crocs. Though. I love the Crocs.
Okay. Drive or fly?
Well, I mean, I hate flying, but you get there faster.
That's true. Some people are afraid of it. Venomous or non-venomous snakes?
Venomous are just so much cooler. They're just so different. It's so cool. Cobras, oh my God.
Yeah, that's what Kevin said. You'd been doing a lot of work with them. Sea or land?
Honestly, see, man. Yeah.
Cool. 1 million now or 10 million later?
I do the later.
Okay. Coffee or energy drink or nothing?
I don't usually do either.
I kind of thought that about you. TV show or your own YouTube or social?
That's where I'm at right now, actually. That is literally crossroads I'm at right now where I'm like, what am I doing? I gotta figure this out. I got producers talking to me all the time, and I'm like, ideally, a successful social media, I think, is better.
Okay. Something that makes you laugh.
The comments I get on the internet.
Something that you have changed your mind on in the last 3 years.
Oh my God, I don't have one off the top of my head I can think about. Maybe the TV stuff. I used to be all about doing TV, and now I'm like pretty anti-TV.
Interesting. We'll get to that. Best advice you remember being given.
Remember that you are always replaceable.
Very
I think
good.
that's very humbling, and I think a lot of people need to keep that in mind. People get way too big for their britches, and they forget like you are always replaceable.
I like it. One piece of advice that you have passed on more than once.
Um, I mean, there's a lot. I've taught a lot of people how to handle alligators and crocodiles and whatnot, and I think one of my favorite things that I tell people is when you're working with dangerous animals, like he doesn't care who you are, he doesn't care what you've done. It's who you are in that moment and whether you can walk the walk, and just again, the humility, keeping that in mind that like that thing will reduce you to a literal turd if you mess up. Like,
Any of them, even
yeah.
Casper.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. I'm always preaching that.
Yeah, I like that on your on some of your videos with Casper. Like, um, that's one of the things that you say is like this animal. I love him, but he does not love me,
Yeah.
and you have to do things the right way, and you have to assume that you're going to get bit. Basically, is I think the advice that you were given in that. And so, in other words, if you're assuming that you're going to get bit, then you have to handle yourself in the right way, right? And I'm definitely
Yeah.
not a
It's
wildlife handler. I can handle fish with teeth, but I'm not. I don't have any experience, or nor do I really want any with snakes or crocodiles. But I think that it's super interesting when you see, and I think that's why so many people like what you do. Is like it's super interesting, and most people think I would never want to do that, but you're so calm and comfortable doing it, or you at least you look like it on the outside.
No, I'm really calm doing it. I think a good way to put that is everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah,
And it's the same with this. Like we can talk all day. People ask me constantly, well, what do you do about this? And what do you do about that? And what do you do about this? And XYZ plan, this, and this. And I can answer all those. And I do have plans, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the line, what's your plan when you get nailed? Because that's where your brain needs to be, and like that's everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and
right.
people think that they're going to be able to avoid having the animal like actually try to get them, especially with like I do so much with Casper because I run tours with him and people forget like I run a business. So of course I promote him the most because I want you to come do my tour. I'm trying to make money.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to build a sanctuary over here out of my own pocket. So people think like I only work with a mellow alligator that's really calm. And it's like, dude, as a professional alligator wrestler for like the last decade, like I know how to handle a completely wild alligator. So when I'm with Casper, I'm always like, yeah, people are like, what are you gonna do if he tries to bite you? I'm like, he's tried to bite me 1,000 times for one. And for two, he can throw anything he's got at me. I'll handle it.
Do you think at this point, like when with all of your alligator wrestling and then, I mean, how I would imagine that you can sense the body language, you can feel the tension in the alligator, very similar to like when we're handling fish. You got a big kingfish or something with teeth, a wahoo, something like that, or barracuda. When you're handling something like that, you can feel the tension in the fish. Like he's about to go. Like
Yeah,
you can feel it, right?
absolutely.
And I don't know anything about alligators or crocodiles, but I would imagine that it's a very similar thing that someone that's experienced, if you have your hand on that animal, you could feel that it is about to do something. You don't know,
Yeah,
you might not know
absolutely.
what, but like explain that to me. Like how long does it take for you or somebody that you're training to kind of get comfortable enough to where you're really kind of forecasting behavior, or like it's not a good time to go for that particular one, otherwise you're good.
Yeah, it's I would say it's kind of a mix between experience with the animal and then also just being someone that can really pick up on minor differences and things that happen. I don't know exactly how to articulate that well, but I always say like when I'm training somebody new to handle alligators or something, I'm always like, do you have any experience in martial arts? That's usually one of the best things somebody can have is experience in martial arts. Because whether you know it or not, if you've done it for a while, you really pick up on how people telegraph their movements when they're going to go for a strike or a kick or something like that. And so being able to recognize when somebody's telegraphing really helps you so much with animals as well because everything does it, everything
Right.
telegraphs. So you have to be able to learn the animal, but just having that years of experience of being able to pick up on when something's going to telegraph is incredibly important. And then also, like with Kevin, you know, I taught Kevin how to handle alligators, and he didn't have any martial arts experience, but interestingly enough, he was a cheerleader. And which is not what you would think would be good for this, but it is, because it's about, you know, knowing your body, knowing your strengths, knowing how to work your body. And then also you're working with somebody, even though you're not like fighting them, like for my
Right.
background with martial arts, you know, but you are reading somebody, you know, you're reading their body and how to work with them. And you're throwing, you know, obviously I've never done cheerleading, but for Kevin, when he's like throwing somebody up and doing this kind of stuff, like it's very physical, and you're reading that person the whole time, you know?
Yeah. What's your martial arts background?
So I'm not a pro by any means in any way. I don't want to sound cooler than I am. I'm definitely not like a pro or anything like that. But I did karate all through high school into college. And then in college, I also did Aikido. And then just kind of after college, I started just kind of training like MMA. I started working with a guy that fought in UFC and doing training with him and whatnot too.
Cool. That's awesome. Um, I've got some friends in the UFC too, like Clay Guida. Do you know him? The
I don't know
carpenter.
him.
He's fought like 50 times in the UFC. He's a Hall of Famer. Anyway, he loves to fish, and you'd love this guy. He's an awesome dude. But down in South Florida a lot. Maybe and North Florida too. Maybe we'll come see you someday. Um, so specifically, I wanted to ask you about the alligators and crocodiles, because we have a tremendous number of people that listen to this podcast love the Everglades, not only just the fishing in the Everglades, but all the creatures that are in the Everglades too. But you also do a lot of stuff with sharks, and you've done a lot of shark diving and stuff like that, which is another creature that is in the Everglades for sure. Where do you do the shark stuff that you like to do?
So the majority of it is off the coast of Jupiter.
There's
So
plenty
that's
of
the
them
main.
there.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that's why, you know, so if I'm doing like the tourism side for sharks, that's the main place we go, because if I got a group of people that want to see them, that's pretty much your guaranteed spot to go see them, you know.
Yeah.
But then what's that?
Yes, that's definitely a
Yeah.
guaranteed spot to see them.
Yeah, yeah. So that's like the one of the best places to go see them. But then I also do a lot of international stuff, traveling, you know, to go diving and whatnot. I mean, that's mainly for me. You know, I do a lot of photography and then shooting video as well. So I do a lot of shark diving in Mexico is one of the best places as well. I love it out there.
Yeah. And like in the Yucatan of Mexico, or which side of Mexico?
Depends what you're going for. But the better is on the other side, on the Pacific side.
Yeah.
So out there, like some of the offshore islands, like we'll go Guadalupe for the great whites is the most famous one. I've done that one. Socorro is absolutely amazing too. That's a really awesome dive site. Where else did we go? We went for whale sharks in Playa del Carmen. Yeah, so bouncing around out there.
That's cool. Where did you grow up?
So I'm from Palm Bay, Florida. That's where I was born and raised. And then as soon as I was out of high school, I went down to Miami to go to FIU for college.
Okay. And where along the way did you pick up diving and I mean, it sounded like when I was reading your bio, you were out in the woods a lot when you were a kid, finding creatures and snakes and lizards and everything else. But where did the diving come in?
So my grandparents had a timeshare down on Marathon.
Okay.
And so every summer we go down there. And I mean, before I can even remember, my dad would take me out snorkeling, and I would just be like a little monkey clutched to his back. And he'd take me and he'd shove me underwater to go down and look at stuff. And yeah, that's where my love of diving came from.
Wow. Do you remember the first time that you were encountered sharks and what you thought of it as a kid?
So we were going from you do a lot in the Keys
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
we're up base there.
you know I think it's called Money Key.
Yeah, I know Money Key.
So we were swimming to Money Key from I forgot what key it is that's closer on the west side. I
Is
can't remember.
that well, Money Key that I know, there could be more than one Money Key, but would that be like around Marathon area? Is that what you're talking about?
Man, it's been a
Or Big
while.
Pine, maybe?
I think so. I don't want to mess it up. I
Okay.
don't.
Either way, you're swimming to Money Key.
Yeah, I'm gonna mess it up. It's been so long. But anyways, there was one very small key that was off of one of the bigger ones, you know, and so we parked the car there and we'd swim out to the other one. or at least my dad would, and I would just kind of hold on to him,
Yeah.
And my dad was a big diver and everything like that. But I'll never forget, we were swimming out across that, and there's an area where you're just in open water and you can't see anything. I mean, once you're next to the keys, you can see the bottom, see the reef, it's beautiful. But we were just in open water and you can't see anything down. And I looked down and there was just I don't know what it was, but to me looked like had to be like a 20-foot shark that just went right underneath us, and couldn't even tell, like, you couldn't see the skin of it, you just saw the shadow, and it was massive. I still don't know what it was, but it was a massive shadow of a shark that went right underneath us. And just, yeah, I was a little kid, I couldn't even swim on my own, and just being like, we're gonna die, just being terrified. But also fascinated at the same time.
So how does it go from being terrified and fascinated to actually that's your life's passion? Like, where along the line did the switch flip?
So this is my personal theory, but I think that we are obsessed with, like, humans are obsessed with predatory animals. Like, I don't care who you are, you don't know anything about animals. You live in a city your entire life. If you see a video of a dude getting attacked by a crocodile, people stop scrolling and watch it.
Yes.
So we are innately obsessed with watching this kind of stuff. I think because it's instinctual, because in the back of your monkey lizard brain, well, you don't know, but back there, you're like, pay attention. This might happen to you one day, even though nowadays it's not going to happen to anybody, most people at least. But instinctually, our basal brain is like, always pay attention when an animal's attacking something so you can learn from that experience and try to pick something up that might save you down the line. And I think that, I mean, if you look at other primates, they do the same thing. If you see monkeys and one of them gets nailed by a croc, all
Yes.
the other monkeys are watching,
Yeah.
and we're all trying to learn so it doesn't happen to us. Like, what'd that guy do wrong? How do I avoid this? So I think that fascination for me, I consumed all media that I can get my hands on, on TV and whatever, watching and learning about these animals. I think because of that. And then the more I learn, the more I'm like, and then I look at what I see in real life and I'm like, this is wrong. Like, what people are saying is incorrect. And I would find myself knowing more than, even as a kid, knowing more than all the adults do, or even some of the people on TV do.
Yeah.
And so the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, dude, people don't know what they're talking about. And then the more I learn about the animals, I'm like, they're really not that bad. Like, yeah, they're dangerous, don't get me wrong, but they're really amazing. And they deserve our admiration and our respect and our protection.
So specifically, like sharks or alligators or crocodiles, or what comes to mind when you're thinking about when you were a kid and you just noticed, like, this is not the right information coming through?
I mean, probably sharks is probably the biggest one, because people just have this perception that sharks are just completely out to get you. And then nowadays I'm out there freediving. I'll be literally surrounded by 50 bull sharks holding my breath, 60 feet deep, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I'm totally calm. Nothing's going on. People are like, what, bull sharks? I'm like, they're not what you think. They're really not. Now, I'm always the first person telling you, don't get me wrong. You do things the wrong way, they'll kill and eat you. Like, they're real predators, but they're not mindless. They're not stupid. They're really smart. And if you do things the right way, you can be fine.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that? The shark diving, especially with people? I mean, on your own probably first, and then you guide people or go on charters for that, right? Is that the way it happened?
So well, let me tell you the first time I ever went, because it's a really funny story and I almost got killed. So the first time I ever went, I'd seen a few sharks snorkeling, right? And you just see them in the distance, and you're like, okay, whatever, cool. It's exciting. You don't really know much about them yet. And then I had a friend who was big into spearfishing. And he's like, no, every time I'm chumming for spearfishing, we get tons of sharks. So let's just go out and chum and see some. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm, God, what was I was probably like, I don't know, like maybe 25 or something like that, So just full testosterone, no brains,
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, it'll be fun. And it's just the four of us. And we go out there and we start chumming and we get a ton of sharks. And we get I don't know, man. We probably had like maybe 30 or 40 silkies and duskies and sandbars up. It was during the summer, the pelagic season out here. So we had a ton of them up, and it's really fun. It's awesome. And it was calm. Everything was going great, but we didn't know we were doing it all. It just happened to be going well. And then we popped up. We were all in the water off the boat. Nobody's on the boat. And we look up and there's a huge storm rolling in. and the wind's blowing this way and the current's going this
Oh
way.
no.
And before we know it, we're losing the boat, and we are trying to catch up to the boat, and the wind is blowing it so hard. And like we couldn't, and I had little tiny fins. I wasn't like, I just been like mainly snorkeling. I'd never done free diving at that point. So everybody, the other three guys had like big, long free dive fins. I had these little stupid snorkel fins. And so we panicked and we're like, we got to get to the boat. And we start just hauling butt to the boat. And they leave me in the dust immediately because I got these little stupid fins and they have the nice big ones. And so like we get separated and we're panicking and we're splashing like crazy and freaking out. And so if anybody knows anything about sharks so far, you're like, don't get separated from the group. Don't panic. And we're doing everything wrong right here. And so as soon as I got separated from the group and we're panicking, all the sharks fixated on me.
Oh boy.
And then before I knew it, I had one, like try to bite me in the leg, and I turn around and I push it off. And as soon as I do that, and I don't know what I'm doing again. So I'm like doing big explosive movements, like trying to punch them. And then like the more you move, the more you panic, the more explosive your actions, the more they're interested because they're like, oh, this guy's freaking out. Let's get him, and then they're on me. And I'm just thinking like I had a moment because at that point I've been working with alligators for years anyway. So like I understood animals, but my first experience was sharks, but a lot of stuff does translate. And so I was like, I didn't know enough about sharks to know what I was screwing up, but I knew I was screwing up. And I remember just having this moment, not of fear, but of anger and being like, I am so stupid. How did I get in this situation? Like I know better. And just, I was pushing them off like left and right. They're coming up trying to bite me. And I mean, like full on trying to bite you, you're hitting them right in the nose. And like, one hits me here and I push it there and it hits me there and I'm just like back and forth like this and I'm like I'm gonna die. Like I definitely thought I was gonna at least I thought I was gonna lose a big chunk. I didn't know if I was gonna get killed, but I was like, there's no way I'm getting out of this without getting bit. And thankfully one of my buddies noticed and he came back to me. And as soon as he was with me, the sharks backed off. And because then you're together again, they want to single out that individual by themselves. And as soon as my friend was back with me, they backed off. And then like I calmed down. And then because my other friends got to the boat and then they brought the boat over and then we were fine. But it was like that close, man. I almost got totally screwed.
And when you hear a story like that, or even think about any type of story like that, half the people, or maybe way more than half the people, are going to say, I will never do this again. And then there is a certain portion of that population that will say, this is exactly what I want to do. Just different, not this way again, right? Like,
yeah.
Do you remember thinking that? Like you get on the boat and you're safe now, and well, you still have the storm to deal with, but you're out of the water, you're out of the sharks. Are you thinking, I'm never going to do that again? Or did you have a fascination with, I have to see that more and I have to learn how to handle that situation or never get in that situation again?
Yeah, I think the big one once I was on the boat was just realizing like how many levels of things we screwed up. I mean, there were so many stupid decisions made there. And like, why didn't we have somebody on the boat? Why didn't I have proper gear? Why weren't we with someone who really knew sharks well? I mean, there's just with guys that were spear fishermen,
Right.
so like they weren't shark divers. They didn't know shark behavior well. I mean, just so many stupid decisions compounded right there that ended up with almost me getting really severely hurt or even killed. So, I mean, that was the big one for me. It was just kind of like a wake up of like, never get in a situation like that again. If you're going to go with some kind of animal or whatever, you need to know what you're doing, or you need to be with somebody who knows what they're doing, and not just kind of wing it like that, especially with a situation that can go south so quickly.
Yeah. So that's interesting about what you do with Casper. I mean, that is kind of how you're making some money right now, is you invite people to come swim with you and this 10-foot long alligator that you have. And I do notice that there is a net in what you're doing, but that's kind of the thing. They don't, I mean, some of these people might know what they're doing, but they're obviously going with someone who does know what they're doing, you. And what is that like for people to get into that enclosure with Casper?
Well, here, let me tell you how I came up with the idea, because I think that's going to give you a lot of clarity into this thing. So I go out and I dive with wild alligators, and
Hmm.
I photograph and film them and all this kind of stuff. And so the wild gator stuff is really cool and really fun, also really dangerous. And I'd have people all the time, and to this day still, they hit me up all the time, take me out in the wild, take me out in the wild. And I'm like, I can't. Like, it's really dangerous. Legally, you can't anyways. Like, you're not allowed to go dive with wild alligators running tours. You
That
can't.
would be
You
like
can't do that. You're gonna
harassment
get
of
arrested.
wildlife, or what would that be? Why can't you do that? Is that a harassment?
Um, well, the areas where it's clear enough to do it are usually within national parks, stuff like that, where and they also have rules. You're not allowed to approach the animal within 15 feet. So, because I've had a lot of people hit me up on this,
Hmm.
and then trying to figure out how to monetize diving with alligators in the wild. And I've talked to people at FWC, and everybody's just like, there's no legal way to do that, unless you had private property and then you own the animal. Which is
There you
what
go.
we're doing, for the
Yeah.
tour is the idea. But actually going out there with wild alligators and whatnot, like, it's just they don't want to hang around you either. Like with the wild gators, 99% of the time they're afraid of you and they take off. And if they don't, they're hunting you.
Right.
And so the only way to have them calm and hanging out is if they're fed. And of course, we know it's illegal to feed wild alligators. So
Hmm.
just all the way around, it just doesn't work out as a tour. Plus it's insanely dangerous. Like,
Right.
as someone who goes out there, I'm telling you, like, if you do that as a tour, somebody's going to get killed. Like, there's no doubt about it. So I had so many people asking me, and then I had a National Geographic photographer hit me up. And I was like, oh, dude, it's National Geographic, like, I got to take him, and I'll do it where it's not a tour and we're fine, and like, we're just going to go take pictures, whatever. So I take him out there. 5 minutes in, I'm not even kidding you. 5 minutes in, we're swimming along, and a gator just beelines right for his head. And he didn't see it coming. And like, I had him in front so we can get shots. So I'm behind him and I see it coming right for him. And I was able to grab the gator before it got to him. But it happened so fast.
Yeah.
It's literally seconds. And if I had been like, oh, look, there's a bird, he would have got killed.
Wow.
Like, right for his head. And I mean, that's what they fixate, because if they're on the surface, to make this make more sense too, like alligators, there's 1.8 million alligators in the state of Florida. They don't typically see humans as prey. We're too big. They're not interested in people. If they want to eat people, you'd have people dying every single day in Florida. So they're really not interested in us until you're swimming. Because when you're swimming, what happens is when they're on the surface of the water like this, their eye is only about an inch above the water.
Yeah.
And if they're looking out across the water and they see you as a swimmer, all they see is the top of your head and your arms moving. And this is perceived as a small animal they can absolutely kill. So I've had even 5-foot alligators try to come after me in the wild. But 5-foot gator is like a joke. It's like a baby. But they'll still come for you because they think they're coming for this.
Right.
And at that size, even at 5 feet, if he grabs your head and shakes, breaks your neck.
Wow.
So that's why it's so dangerous to be swimming in the wild with them, because they will go after the small animal that is the top of your head floating, right? So anyways, though, I had the Nat Geo guy out there. That gator just came right for him, dude. And after that, I was like, never again. No, cannot do this.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, so many people hit me up. How can I do this where I can capitalize on it? And then I was like, well, I work with alligators and we got a pond. Why don't we bring people in there and see if we can pull it off? So when I first started it as a tour, we had 15 alligators in that pond. And because I didn't know if it was going to work, I didn't know if it was going to be popular or
Right.
whatever. So we had 15 gators in there with no net. There was no net at that point because nobody had ever done this before, and I made it up. So there's no law to stop me. So I was like, if you want to do it, sign waivers, come in with me. And so I had people doing it, and we did it for maybe a year or two like that. And then, I was like, this is chaos. So once it got a little more popular, we brought the numbers down to about 5 or 6 alligators at once. And then FWC got wind of what we were doing. Again, we're not breaking any laws, but they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, there's nothing saying I can't actually. And they're like, well, and then they like made a little memo saying like, we're not allowed to be doing that. We have to have a barrier. So then that's when we put up the net and all that stuff.
Do you remember the first person that you let in there with you?
Uh, so really crazy. Somehow I hit like, I don't even know how to say this, like really, really rich guys from Mexico that I'm pretty sure are in the cartel.
Uh-huh.
And I'm serious. I got one of them, like, I don't know how he heard about me, and he came over, and then like all of his buddies, they'd fly over in their own little private planes, drop in, get in there with me for the day, take some pictures, and then fly back home. Like it was wild.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed on your Instagram was that you said that like your mission was to raise awareness about nuisance gators and that was part of the mission of allowing people to get in and swim. So I was just kind of wondering how that works. Like what kind of awareness are you? I mean, you want to make people alligator advocates, right? Like you want to teach them about the alligator and make them a little more educated on the animal, but what awareness are you trying to bring for nuisance gators? How do you connect the two?
So, a couple different things, right? So the first thing I always like to point out is that people think in extremes, and this is our politics. This is everything. It is you're this camp or this camp. People do not understand nuanced reality. So with any kind of dangerous animal, it's always bloodthirsty killing machine, perfectly tame, won't hurt you.
Yes.
And I fight with both of those people. I'm like, reality's in the middle. I got to fight the shark people all the time. Like, I'm a huge shark advocate. I love sharks. And then I got the people who are like, sharks are puppies that don't bite people. And I'm like, bro, I've almost been a statistic multiple times. Okay. You can't tell me that giant predatory animal doesn't see people as food. But then if you say that, everybody's like, yeah, kill the sharks. They're mindless killing machines. I'm like, no, reality's in the middle. They're not mindless killing machines, but they're not out to get you. If you have like just half a brain cell and you just learn a little bit about these things, you can avoid becoming one of these statistics, So same with the alligators. It's understand that they are not out to get you. They hang out all day. Like I was just saying, there's over 1 million in the state. If they wanted to get people, you'd have people dying every day. They're really not interested in us, but they're also not puppy dogs. And you got to be careful. And you have to be aware that we're living alongside an animal whose predecessors literally ate dinosaurs. This is a massive, powerful animal. So they do deserve our respect. You have to have some level of education, right? So the other thing, though, in Florida, we get they say about 1,000 people a day move to the state of Florida. And then we know COVID obviously like tripled that or something. Everybody's coming to Florida. So let's just go with 1,000 people a day to keep it simple. Out of 1,000 people a day to move to the state of Florida, how many people know anything about alligators? One,
Yeah.
Probably zero. Nobody knows anything. So they come here, and then when they first see an alligator, they imagine it's a bloodthirsty killing machine that's going to come after them. And so just trying to teach people that it's not out to get you. Just keep your distance, have some respect, leave them alone. The 3 big ones I always tell people: don't feed them, don't have kids and pets near the water's edge, and don't go swimming in their habitat, like we were just saying, for that reason. If everybody that came here knew those things, we would avoid the majority of these problems. But then what also happens is people get here, they see an alligator, they're afraid at first, and then they realize it's not doing anything. Oh, okay, it's a puppy. They're not dangerous. And it's like, It's one extreme to the other. It's so hard to get people to live in that middle ground where you're like, they're not monsters, but if you I don't want to say the language, but the abbreviation for FAFO.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting. Like we're fishermen, and the shark situation in Florida is something that a lot of people talk about. I love your perspective on that. Like that you can't be in one camp or the other, or like you're not in one camp or the other. You're kind of in the middle, and that's where most people, I think, should at least be aware of the two extremes. Like they're bloodthirsty killing machines. They're not puppy dogs. They're somewhere in the middle. The proper, if you do your part, you're probably not going to have any problem with them. But there's also seems to be interested in your opinion of what the population in the state of Florida, especially where you're diving. You've been doing it long enough. Have you seen the increase in the number of sharks in that area and in the state of Florida?
Right. So, well, let me get to that. But first, I just really like to emphasize how politicized everything gets.
Sure.
In that, like, if you are that person on the middle ground, you're hated by both sides. Both sides think that you're wrong and you're on the other side. And it's just like, it's impossible to have like a meaningful conversation where somebody is not going to politicize whatever you're talking about in some way, But,
well, unless you have a podcast that you can talk in extended length like this, and this is exactly what we do. Like to not just a tiny little soundbite of like, well, I don't think that they're puppy dogs. Okay, well then kill them all, right? Like,
yeah.
But if you can have actually a conversation and you can understand where somebody's coming from, not only are you educating people about, I mean, you have a tremendous amount of experience and information, like why wouldn't someone listen to what you had to say about it? Like instead of putting you in one camp or the other. But yeah, you're right. It is politicized.
Yeah, well, and the problem too is just attention spans. People. I mean, I look at my video metrics since I have my social media channels, and that's what I'm trying to be really big on. And so I try to pay attention to like the metrics and the analytics of my social media. And most people don't make it past 30 seconds. If you watch the little graph, it literally goes like a minute. But even a minute 30, like how can you even begin to approach a subject within a minute and 30
Right.
seconds? And then people, they just trail off. The majority of people don't make it past their 30-second mark. And it's like, how do you get through to people if they don't have the mind to pay attention?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what is your opinion of the sharks though? Do you think that they've
So,
exploded?
so my big thing is talking about shifting baselines, right? So are you familiar with that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but go ahead and explain it.
So like the whole concept of like shifting baselines is that we have an opinion on what is normal within our little tiny lives. And
Hmm.
I mean, our human lives are very small and relatively insignificant. So if what, so sorry to back up, I'm explaining this incorrectly. So to back it up, so like you're shifting baseline. So your baseline data is your initial data on what you think is normal, and everything after that is what you're going to base off of. So for us as humans with our very small lifespans, if we're talking about something that was, 30 years ago as your base point, 30 years ago is when the environment was in one of the worst situations it's ever been. Because 30 years ago is right after, I mean, in the 70s, we had the Endangered Species Act, we had environmental revolution,
Hmm.
all these kind of things happen. So it takes time for those regulations to catch up. So let's say, just for the sake of an argument and simplicity, let's say, 30, 40 years ago was at the lowest point for all environmental regulation, as we know. And so at that point, all animal populations, just for simplicity, let's say this, were at the lowest that they're at. Right. So let's say shark populations were 80% lower than what they would have been pre Europeans arriving into the States. Right.
Hmm.
So just to keep everything super simple. So we have a population that's 80% lower than what it would have been pre European. So then we enact environmental legislation. We have protections. We have all these marine protected areas. All these things happen. And so then the population starts to rebound very slowly. But it's going to go very slowly because a lot of these animals, especially predatory animals, have a very slow reproductive cycle. So it might take, 10, 15 years, depending what we're talking about, for it to reach sexual maturity. And then those animals then have to have their offspring that find other offspring. So what you get is an exponential climb. And so that can result in an explosion or a perceived explosion because things can happen so quickly. Because, again, with those slower life cycles, you have, 20 becomes 40, becomes 80, and so
Hmm.
it does grow exponentially. So it can happen really quickly and seemingly overnight because for us, in our very short lifespans, we're like, oh my God, there's more than ever. And ever for us is 30
Right.
years ago.
Yeah.
But think about 300 years ago and what it's supposed to be. And so even now, we can have more sharks than we've ever had in our short lifespans, is still probably like, for the sake of the argument, let's say it was at 80% lower than what's supposed to be pre-European. Now it's at like 50% lower than it's supposed to be pre-European. And we're like,
Hmm.
there's more than ever. We have to do something. We have to kill them. And it's like, there's 50% lower than what they're supposed to be at pre-European level,
Yeah, I'm following you.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So,
But there's this other camp though that if anyone says that there's a lot of sharks, no, there's not. No, there's not. It's the sharks are at an all-time low, and it could be worldwide, but like where you're diving and in the Keys, there's a lot. There's a lot of
yeah.
sharks, and there's more than there used to be. On whatever baseline you're talking about, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there are a lot more than there were. Based upon my experience and most of the people experience that spend a lifetime on the water. And it just seems like there's a whole group of people that are just not even willing to not even accept it, willing to um, just take it as a possibility that you could have a worldwide decrease in the shark population, but in certain areas you could have a massive increase at the same time. It's a
In these
big
protected
ocean, right? Like it's a big ocean, right? You could I think that's what's going on. Like there's more sharks in some areas, there are less sharks in other areas. Maybe overall, the global population could possibly be coming down. That's what a lot of the science says. But boy, you can't, I mean, for some people just to not even be willing to have the conversation that there are certain areas where there are more sharks than there have been in the last 30 years. They're just not even willing to have the conversation. If you even have that conversation, you're in the wrong camp, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
politicized. Yeah.
super politicized. Like, but yeah, that's a whole topic that we talk about a lot. Are the sharks, and you have like the the fishermen. They think there's too many a lot of times because you can't get a fish up, and then the diving people are like, well, no, I mean we like to see them, right? So cool. So they want more until there are too many, and then they think there's too many. Like now we're gonna somebody's gonna get eaten, right? So now there's too many, or I don't know. It's just a funny little topic that is
Well,
going on right now.
yeah, I was going to say some of the other points on that too is, like you just said, you got to think in time spans of like 300 years.
Yeah,
And like that, it's impossible for us to do that. We're people.
right.
We don't
But then
think like
also
that.
there's not data. Like they weren't having shark. I mean, they would have only counted sharks by the number that they caught on a boat, right? Like 300
Right.
years ago. I mean,
So,
I don't think that they had the same kind of data that we have or we're trying to get today.
right. So one of the craziest things to think about, imagine whales, so many whales that you could literally walk across them and that they would go out as far as you could see. It's impossible to even imagine that. And
Yeah,
those are what people wrote about. And they're not making it up, and even
right.
if they are embellishing somewhat, like it's got to be pretty close to that. Or birds. Imagine birds so thick flying overhead that they would block out the sun and it would look like it was like, dusk.
Yeah,
That was a normal occurrence that doesn't exist anymore. And so, across the board, and again, these are the shifting baselines kind of thing. Like that used to be normal. And now if people saw like 3,000 birds fly by, you would be like, oh my God, that's incredible. This is awe-inspiring. And back in the day, you used to black out the sky, or the
right.
whale thing. So we can imagine that, like on the sharks, we absolutely know that their population has plummeted. Like we don't know what it was back then, but we can imagine based on the other animals that we do know have plummeted. Maybe we can make some guesses of what it could be. But here's the other thing that makes it so much more complicated: is we're dealing with animals that live in the ocean. It's massive. It's massive. We don't understand. We don't even know where a lot of sharks breed. We don't know where they go. And a lot of these animals have migratory patterns. They go outside of our country, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're going outside of our country to an area that has no protection at all,
Right.
should we alleviate our protections because it seems like there's a lot here when maybe ours is the only stronghold they have?
Right.
Or if we're talking about like Jupiter, we know that is an epicenter for sharks. We know that that's a major migration point for them. And it's kind of like if you're, like you're a human hunter or whatever, you're somebody bothered by humans, I don't know. And then you go into a club and you're like, God, there's so many of them in here. Kill them all. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're going to a place where they all hook up and have sex. Like, if you're going fishing off Jupiter, man, you might as well be going to the club and be like, look at all these disgusting humans everywhere. We need to kill some of these things.
Yes.
Not realizing that they're coming from all around the surrounding area to that point.
Yeah. Or like a football game. It's a football
Yeah.
game for sharks. It's the Super Bowl. Like
Yeah. Like
or a college football
that's
game. You
their
pack
spot,
100,000
man.
people in there.
Yeah, that's their friggin' spot, And it's like if you're going to their spot and you're like, God, there's so many. Well, duh. Go to a football game. Like, why there's so many humans here? This is gross. They live in this kind of density. We need to bomb them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
No, I certainly see that, but I think with so many of the fishermen, like it's really more than just off Jupiter. Like it's all the way up to like Maryland and all the way down to Key West and then around through the Gulf. Like the sharks are there's a lot of them. And no matter where you're fishing in that whole eastern seaboard or the Gulf of Mexico, it just seems like there are a lot, which I think is good. Like that's great. There's a lot of them, right? But
Yeah.
it,
Well,
it,
like,
it can be frustrating, to a lot of people to fish, finally catch the fish that they want, and then it gets eaten.
Yeah, well, like on the Eastern Seaboard, especially too, like we have a comeback of like marine mammals,
Hmm.
so that helps feed, the great white population. So going back to the whale thing, like you wipe out all these marine mammals, or not even whales, everything. I mean, we have wiped out everything. We are in this sixth mass extinction. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like this is a mass extinction caused by humans across the board for everything. And so when we do start doing environmental protection, we do start seeing that kind of stuff come to fruition, then we are going to see these population explosions that within our smaller single or double generational lifetimes, we're like, oh my God, there's more than ever, not realizing it's actually way less than it was before people were here,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm following you on that for sure. Um, it's a difficult conversation to have because we don't have so much of the data from 300 years ago or whatever, like we were talking about. But I'm glad to get your opinion on it. What about the TV? Like that seems to be a place where you're at a crossroads. You've done so much. Discovery Channel, National Geographic. What else? Kind of can you name off a few of the for people that aren't familiar with your work, all the different stuff that you've done?
Yeah, so I like have a little like the list I always read off whenever I'm doing things. I'm like, I've been on Nat Geo, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, CNN, NBC, History, Fox, the Weather Channel. Like, yeah, so I've done a whole ton of different TV, and some of those shows were really fun and really good time, but most of them are not. Most of them I really did not like my experiences on a lot of these TV shows. And most of them are just they're garbage, man. Most of them are fake. A lot of them are abusive to animals, to the people. It's not a good time,
To the
So that's
people,
why,
abusive to the animals and the people.
yeah, I've worked on a lot of TV shows where, like, I mean, which one do you want to talk about first?
Either one.
Yeah, well, I'll give you like on the people side because it's just shorter. They just straight up lie to you all the time. I've gone on shows where the entire premise of the show is not being told honestly. I've gone on shows where they're like, "Oh yeah, man, this is your show. You're the star of this show." Blah blah blah, and like tell me over and over and over these Skype calls with interviews. This is going to be your show. You're the star of the show, and like you kind of start thinking like, man, they keep on saying that so much. Like they just trying to like fluff my ego. Like why do they say that so much? And then you get there and you realize it's because you're not the star of the show. This other dude is, and they're trying to pit you against them. And that way you're going to have this like anger of like, it's my show, man. And he's like, no, it's my show. And like that's literally what happened to me on one of these shows.
Well,
And like, I saw it coming, thankfully. I saw it coming. I was already had a lot of suspicion towards producers. So I was like, I literally looked at the camera so they couldn't use it. And I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be this kind of show, right? Where you lie to me about it. And then this guy, yeah, okay. Like,
wow.
so just shows like that. I mean, I've been on shows of producers where like we're working with an animal or something, and one of the other guys said something that was incorrect, and I was like, actually, that's not true. It's XYZ, and he's like, oh, I didn't know that. And the producer's like, no, we're saying that because it sounds better, and because it was about like this animal will kill a dozen people, and I'm like, no, it really doesn't. And the producer's like, no, that sounds better. We're using that. And I'm like, wasn't the show supposed to be like educational? And he's like, the producer literally said, the effing people will effing eat what I effing feed them.
Wow.
It's literally what he said. He's like, I don't care. You don't like it, get off my set. I'm gonna say whatever sells.
Wow.
Like, I'm not. And that was a guy from Animal Planet.
Huh.
Like, it's just like, dude, like what? I've done like I've worked on like survival kind of stuff. One of them, like I'm obviously an animal lover. I love animals. I'm actually vegetarian because I love animals so much. And I was on there. I'm like, look, we can do like a kind of survival kind of stuff. We can talk about it, whatever. But I'm telling you right now, I know how TV works. Absolutely, we are not killing anything for the sake of filming it for TV. If we're actually surviving, yeah, I would kill any animals. Like
Hmm.
I am vegetarian only so far as it makes sense, and I'm able to do it financially and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not like a zealot. Like I'm very realistic about it. I'm able right now that I don't have to do that. If I had to, I would. But whatever. So we're doing a TV show, and I'm like, we don't have to. Like this is just for the sake of TV. And the guy swore up and down, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Blah blah blah. I made a very big point of saying it multiple times. And then they bought a pig and they brought it into the set. so that we could kill it to survive.
Huh.
It's not even survival. It's not even a wild animal. You brought a domesticated animal in here so that people can kill it on TV for ratings, so it looks like we're surviving. And like, I mean, I literally got up in the producer's face. I'm like, I'm not going to kill him, but I will beat the crap out of you. Like, we're not in America anymore, buddy. Like, you think you're going to play this game with me? Like, it was
Well, I
bad.
can see why you're not so fond about TV and leaning more towards your own kind of deal. If when you look at your YouTube, your social media, like what Blue Sky, like what kind of message, what would be the mission or the message that you're trying to get through on your own channels when you're in control, totally in control of your own message?
I mean, just trying to show reality, what is actually real. I mean, that's the other side of it too. On the animal side, everything on TV is staged. You know, or not everything, but 99% of it is staged. Almost everything on TV is faked. You know, it's just like fishing shows. I'm sure where they're like they got a guy down there hooks it up. Oh, I got a big one. And reel it in. Like
That would be,
so much of
I
it is
would
fake.
love it if that was actually that easy. Because I've been doing fishing shows for 20 years, and we have never had a diver that was so good that they could hook up a fish and we could catch it. But if we could do that, we would catch a lot bigger fish than what we catch on
Yeah.
our show.
Well, I mean, I've obviously never worked on a fishing show. I imagined it might be the same, but I've worked on so many like snake or alligator shows where they literally do that.
Yeah.
They literally I have been the guy in the bushes with the snake and let out the snake right in front of the guy so they can be like, oh my God, look, let's catch it. I've been that guy
Yeah.
when I was a kid multiple times on TV shows. I mean, now that I know better and I watch shows, I'm like, that's completely staged. That alligator is a captive alligator. It shows signs of metabolic bone disease that you only find in captivity. That's not a wild alligator. They do it constantly. They're out in the wild and they catch a wild alligator, and somehow it looks exactly like one out of a zoo where its teeth go like this instead of like this.
Mm,
Like very nuanced things that you would know if you know about these animals, you know? So
right.
they fake all that crap, you know? So I assume they probably do that for a lot of fishing shows too. I don't know though.
I mean, to an extent, I guess maybe bass fishing, where it is a fish that lends itself more to captivity. But I mean, you're not going to do it with a sailfish, or
Right.
like a bonefish or something like that. I mean, if that's possible, I haven't figured it out yet. But I mean, maybe it is. It could be. Maybe I'm going to have a realization that my business could be so much easier if we did that. But we actually have to go out there and catch them. Not only do we have to go out there and catch them, but we have to do it with like a boat following us, which and when I first started it, I was like, I can barely go out there and catch these things by myself when everything is perfectly quiet and everything is good. Now I got to take this boat with me. Like it made it a lot more difficult. You got camera guys back there and slamming the cooler and slamming the hatches, and you're like,
All right. I
okay.
got one for you. So I was working on this show that you signed contracts, so I can't say what it was, all this kind of fun stuff. But we're trying to catch a crocodilian, right? A really big one, and we're trying to do it for real. Because again, I've seen some of these shows, like a lot of them, especially in the reptile, snake, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are fake. So this one, we're trying to catch it for real. So I'm overhanging on this tree that was like over the water. So I'm like 20 feet over the water, and I have a rope hanging down. I have bait there, and we're attracting this 12-foot crocodilian that's coming in. And I'm like, we're gonna get this thing, but it's very wary. It's very smart. You don't get that big being stupid, right? So it's coming in. It's taking its time. All the camera crews up in the bushes, and they're waiting, for it to happen, and they're just hanging out up there in the bushes waiting. Hour goes by, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, but it's coming in. And this is how it is. Like, I'll be out there all night. I'll be out there till the sun comes up. I've done it plenty of times.
Yeah.
And it's coming. I'm going to get it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind, I'm going to get this guy. It's just taking time. So, like, 6 hours in, and he's like 20 feet away. Like, it's right there, man. Like, I almost got him. And then all the camera crew just turns on all the lights and gets up and starts talking. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, union time.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
I'm serious. I swear to God, they literally are like, yeah, union time. We're done. It's been this many
Wow.
hours. We're done. And I'm like, we're in another country. We're here for that animal specifically. The entire reason all this 20 people crew is here in this country is for that one animal. And we just blew it. It will never come back now.
Wow.
And we never got him.
Wow. Union time. I haven't run into that one. But I can tell you, I mean, you have to be very careful with hiring the camera guys because like if you're going out trying to do it for real, you're going to try to catch a slam, a permit, a bonefish, and a tarpon all in one day, and you're not gonna do the magic television. We're trying to do this all in one day. It's gonna take a long time. Like, I mean, that's a really full day, or you just need one more. And man, sometimes you keep the camera guys out. I mean, and they work hard, man. They got the cameras on their shoulder all day long. They can't miss anything. Like, that they got to work hard. But the choice of who you hire is really, really important because you get the guy that's like, I'm done. Well, that's when it's going to happen. That's as soon as you put the camera down, that's when it's going to happen. In my business anyway. Tell me before we finish, you got a couple of different things that I was interested in. You did some work with David Blaine. And what are you doing with him?
So I've worked with him a few times over the years, and he is one of the coolest guys ever. I mean, like I've worked with a few different celebrities and things like that, and a lot of them are not as cool as you think. A lot of them kind of suck.
Never meet your heroes. That's what they say, right?
Yeah. So a lot of them, they kind of suck, right? But no, David Blaine is like, that dude is the real deal. I cannot speak highly enough of him. He is so cool and so nice. I mean, for somebody who's like really, really like legitimately famous and like multimillionaire, the first time I met him, I was we were in Beverly Hills. And he hired me out there to be a consultant on a gator project for him where he was holding his breath inside this glass orb with an alligator. And so I was just there as like a safety guy or whatever. And everything went fine. He knows what he's doing, but I had to be there for like insurance or whatever. And so after the shoot, like I never met him before. And I was like, so nice to meet you, all this stuff. And he's like, oh, where are you staying tonight? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just going to grab a hotel. He's like, stay at my place. And my mansion's right there. You got a ton of rooms. I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah, come stay at my place. yeah, like literally. And like, he just met me, And then so like I stay at his place and he's like, well, I got a bunch of stuff I got to go do, but if you want to take my motorcycle out and go out on the town, feel free.
Wow.
I was like, I just met this guy like 10 minutes ago. Like, I mean, not literally, but it's just like, oh my God, this guy's so cool. And so then I got to work with him on a couple different things. And like, he does a lot of magic, like illusions with like the cards and stuff, but the stunts are real. Like they are totally, there's no illusion. People assume because he does like magic on one side that then the actual stunts must have a trick behind them and they don't. I mean, he is superhuman in his mental capacity and being able to suffer through pain. It's crazy.
Well, one thing I was going to ask you about is like, he held his breath for 17 minutes. Like, and from everything I can tell watching that, it looks legit. Like it looks like he really did it. And I watched this thing. It was like a little documentary on how he prepared himself for it. And he really trained for that for a long time. And you do a ton of diving. Like how do you hold your breath for 17 minutes?
So that's on oxygen assist though. Mm-hmm. So you breathe pure O2 beforehand, which doesn't take away from the amazing part of it though. Like make that straight. So like I do free diving, right? So my personal record, I've held my breath for 5 minutes, and that's just on regular
exceptionally
air.
Good. Exceptionally good.
It's not bad. There's people who do way better, and people have beat David's record now. He held the record for a while, but people have since beaten it. But so David said, I don't want to misquote. I'm pretty sure he said that his regular air breath hold, like what I did with no special anything, I think he said he did 7 minutes, I think. Wow. So, I mean, that's another 2 minutes from what I did. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine. And so then if you do the oxygen assisted, that's what allows you to go a lot longer. But it's still amazing. It doesn't take away from how incredible that is.
I think that'd be also very dangerous, man. To the pure oxygen going straight into your lungs, you'd have to really know what you're doing. That's what impresses me about him is like when he does something like that, he studies it, or it seems like it. I don't know the guy, but it seems like he just immerses himself in it and just studies it and studies it and studies it. And then whatever it is, he's like, well, I'm just going to have to be the best in the world at this in order to pull off this trick, right? Like if I need to, I mean, I would imagine that's probably the way it started. He was doing some kind of trick where he needed to hold his breath a long time, and he did it probably. And then he's like, well, I think maybe, what's the record? Maybe I could do that. Like, and do a real thing. Like,
And he hires, like you just said, he hires the best of the best to teach him. And so like when I was working for him in Vegas, he's doing his Vegas show. He just did one the other day. But so when he first started the Vegas show, he had the alligator in there and he's holding his breath in the glass orb with an alligator. So again, I was there for the alligator. And then also I was helping him out. I'm also a rescue diver. So I was helping him out as a safety person for that too. And then when I'm on the set in Vegas, like it felt like I was on a TV set. And because I've done that a lot, you know, but it's not. But it felt like that at first. And when I've worked on TV sets, I'm used to so many people just being schmucks and so many people just being idiots, you know, like a lot of the producers. And I'm like, how did you get this job? And like, that's what I'm used to. And then I'm on David's set in Vegas and I just assumed, I don't know, it was like that from my TV work. And I realized every person around me is the top of their game. Everyone I met, I'm like, hey, how you doing? Whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm helping Dave with the balloons. I'm the guy that does orients all the Marvel stunts where they fly. And I'm like, whoa. And I meet this other guy, you know, and then this guy and this guy. And I'm like, everybody here is best of the best of the best. And that's how he trusts his life in these people's hands because
yeah.
he's getting the best people there are from every field.
That's super interesting. And you got the Vegas budget, right? Like I'm sure there's a pretty heavy budget that comes with a Vegas show every week. He packs the theater every week. So
Yeah.
he's got to have a, you know, like whatever you need, hire whoever you
Yeah.
need.
It was so cool. I'm on stage with him and well, to back it up. So when he did his breath hold, I was there with him and he's not really training for the breath hold. You know, like when he went to do the record, he's training for that. For the show, he's got so many different things. He's jumping like 70 feet. He's flying in a balloon. He's sewing his mouth shut, literally, like for real, not a trick. He's putting an ice pick right through his arm. Like he does all this crazy stuff. So for the breath hold, he's not even training for it. And he did with the oxygen assist again, but he did 10 minutes and I was right there with him. I'm with him the whole time. You know, I'm his safety guy. So like he did the 10-minute breath hold and then I helped pull him out of the water and he can barely move. He's so limp. And then I help him onto the stage and hold the mic for him. And like, I'm holding him up, you know, and then look out and just see this huge crowd. I'm like, hey, there's Eminem. Hey, there's Woody Harrelson. Hey, like it's crazy. There's Edward Norton. Like it's nuts, man. Like it's so crazy.
Nuts. Have you ever seen that Instagram with that guy who calls himself Mr. 10 Minutes?
I have not seen that.
I don't know what he does, but he can apparently hold his breath for 10 minutes anytime he wants to. And he does all these videos in the pool. I just think it's wild, like that some people can train themselves to do that. And then you can go even further, like 17 minute. And then I looked at the record, like 24 minutes or 23 something for the record. And I'm sure that's oxygen assist. And I don't even know how that works, but man, that is incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically you're just breathing oxygen and fully oxygenating your blood. And so it's all in your system. In that way, you know, you get a longer hold off of it.
Yeah. That's incredible. So tell me before we go about the Cobra work. I heard Kevin told me you've been working with Cobras.
Yeah. So, well, I have for a long time. So, when I was down here in South Florida, I'm up in North Florida now, but when I first went to South Florida, and I was down there, the first job I had down there when I was in college was doing venomous snake shows. So we'd handle cobras and puff adders and rattlesnakes and all this cool stuff in front of like audiences, like 600 people. And so it was just wild to be like, you know, 19, 20-year-old kid who's like, I was kind of an idiot, you know, and I'm sitting here handling a cobra in front of 600 people. And I'm like, this is wild, you know? But then recently, it was supposed to be a secret, but David Blaine was just on Joe Rogan and he said it and he mentioned me on there, which is really cool to be mentioned on Rogan, right? But he was like, yeah, so he just kissed the king cobra and since he said it, I can say it now because they made me, you know, sign all this stuff. You're not supposed to say it, but so I was helping train him to be able to kiss the king cobra.
Wow!
And so we were just, yeah, it was so cool. And you know, working with him and working with the cobras, and it was incredible. And
so when he comes to you, so he just calls you sometime and he's like, "Hey, listen, I got this thing I want to do. I want to kiss a king cobra." Like, is that kind of how it went down, or how does he propose that to you? That I want to learn about cobras because I want to kiss one on stage.
Yeah. And I don't know how much I can say exactly until it airs, you know, but like, yeah, when he first called me, I was just like, oh God. Well, because it's so dangerous. And I know, because I know David, it's going to be for real. And it was. He did it. He pulled it off for real. That snake is a real king. It is not venomoid. The venom is still there. It's not defanged. It's not like tranquilized. Like, that snake will kill you. It is not a joke at all. Full blown, 100% real deal king cobra.
Wow.
Not playing around. And it, like, I don't I don't know how much I can say exactly, you know what I mean? But like, a lot of guys will use like if they're going to work with an alligator, they're going to work with the Casper of alligators. You know, they're going to
Yeah.
work with one that's trained and chill and nice, and then they're going to act like it's a wild one. This was a wild king. This was a real deal king. Like, that's what I mean when I'm like, it was the real thing. It was not like a Casper of cobras.
Yeah.
It was that thing will light you up and end your life. Like, and he did it for real, man. But like, when he called me to do it, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Like, I don't want to be the guy that's responsible for his life, because like, it's a pretty high probability like he might get killed on this. And I had like, I don't know, I had like 2 weeks where I was like trying to decide whether or not I was going to take the job, because I was like, I don't know if we can even pull this off. And like, even if we do it and everything is great, it's still, even for an expert, it is so dangerous that like, you might get killed anyways. Even if he's great, even if he does everything right, he might get tagged and killed. You know, I mean, if we're dealing with a real deal king that's an adult, that's like wild, even if you're awesome at it, those snake handlers that do this stuff on the regular over in Southeast Asia, they do not have a high life expectancy.
Yeah.
Like, they get killed pretty often.
There's some videos of like a guy walking into a room full of cobras, and you've probably seen it. But one kind of raises up and he turns around and sees it and he smacks it on the head, and all of them just kind of are chill, but he's just sorting through these cobras. Like, I mean, what's going on there? Like, can you do that? Like, or are those snakes somehow tame, or like, what is going on in a video like that? Do you know the video I'm talking about? Like,
yes.
what?
Yeah.
I mean,
so
why would they have that many in a room anyway? And why would somebody be sorting through them like that?
I don't know the background on that video. That could be for, I hope it's not, but it could be for a venom lab where they collect a lot of snakes and house them together, and then they, milk old and collect venom. But if it is for a venom lab, I really hope they handle them better than that, because that's not nice. That's not cool. I mean, the cobra is just holding up. It's trying to defend itself. It's not attacking. That's a defense mechanism. It's not an attack thing. And then you smack it in the head, like, its brain is right there. Like, you smack it like that, like, you can easily break bones, cause brain damage. Like, that is not good for that animal.
Right.
But so I don't know exactly what's going on there. I don't know if those snakes, they could be defanged. They could have their mouths sewn shut. That's often done as well. Yeah, it's very often. Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot. Yeah. So sadly, a lot of snake show guys, that's what they'll do, is they'll sew the mouth shut, or they'll rip the fangs out, which doesn't make it 100% safe either, by the way. Those are, I mean, not only is that abusive to the animal, it's not foolproof either. People still get bit and still, get killed, whatever. But also, in some of these places, the turnover rate for the people is negligent. Like, somebody dies, there's somebody ready to step in anyways. So yeah, it's a very different mentality.
Yeah, that is a different mentality, certainly than David Blaine doing what he's doing. That's crazy. Well, I know I want to be respectful of your time, because you already had an animal crisis, and I'm sure who knows what's going on behind you right now. But I really appreciate you coming on. You told some incredible stories, and really nice to get to know you a little bit. I'd love to come and see your North Florida facility when you get that all set up, or the South Florida one. My daughter saw your the people swimming with the alligators, and she was like, "That looks pretty good." And I was like, "Seriously, you want to do that?" So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe she'll really want to do it. I don't know.
How old is she?
She's 20. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was just making sure the age limit's 16. But yeah, come do it, man. Right now we're still doing them every Saturday right now down at Everglades Outpost and Homestead. You can come get in the water with me and Casper. It's really cool. And then once I get my stuff built up here in North Florida, I'll be doing the tours up here too.
Okay. And then for people that want to find you, follow you, see your content, how do they do that?
So on Instagram, it's Gator Boys Chris. On Facebook, Chris Gillette with the verification thing, or my backup on there is Gator Chris. And then on TikTok, Gator Chris One. I need to make them all the same thing.
Yeah.
And then on YouTube, I've got a channel I do called Florida's Wildest with my girlfriend. And then I've got another one called Gator Chris, which is more of like almost like a podcast kind of channel where I just talk and do deep dives.
Nice. And then then you have there's Crocodile Chris too, right? Is that your is that your website?
Yeah, so that was the photography website, or no, the tour website is Crocodile Chris, and I have a
Okay.
bunch of stuff on there. And then I've got a photography website too, which is chrisgillette.com. I
Okay.
need to hire somebody that knows internet stuff to make everything the same.
There you go. There's a job for somebody that loves snakes and sharks and crocodiles. That also knows the internet.
Yeah, because I don't, and I need somebody that can streamline all this stuff for me.
All right. All right. Well, Chris, man, I appreciate you coming on. It's great to get to know you, and great conversation, man.
Hey,
Awesome.
thanks for having me. I really
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Don't get bit.
Yeah, don't get bit.
All right. See ya.